Okay, we are live with episode 53 of Empty the Bench. Nick Fodera, Nick Morgasen, I'm Tom Albano, here as always. And gentlemen, we're finally going to get to talk basketball on this episode.
Yes!
Congratulations, Nick Morgasen. Unfortunately,
It's a double-edged sword. You get to talk basketball, but...
And you get to talk Nets.
This is gonna end very poorly. But before we get to Nets, why don't you talk about what's going to be on the whole episode?
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about, like I said, a little Nets thing here with Nick Morgasen, and it's going to be quite a show. And we're going to be talking about all the bleakness that is going on with minor league baseball. I know it's been a little while since we talked about it. Well, we've gotten a couple of updates in the past couple of days, and, well, if you're a fan of any of these rookie ball teams like I am, it's not good. It's danger zone.
It's bad news, and also some unfortunate news as well, which we'll get to a certain Mets player, but that's later on.
We'll save our tribute for the end. But first, Nick Morgasen, I'd like to hear your reaction to this.
Well, I'm running around. I'm watching the NBA playoffs. I'm trying to figure out why the Bucks have all of a sudden forgotten to play in the playoffs, and is Giannis going to end up being the next big free agent besides LeBron James? But that's another point.
And even in a global pandemic, it looks like the NBA is going to get its wish of LA versus LA in the Western Conference.
Well, we'll see about that. But so, I was actually doing some thinking before this even happened, this news item that's up on the screen in disgrace. But we'll get to that in a moment. But I was thinking about this actually. First, coaches with no experience, whether that's the NBA, Major League Baseball, NFL, I don't know. I can't really speak to it in the NHL. But I was thinking to myself, who's some really good coaches, managers, who would really fit the spot? And then I remembered that my Nets are kind of in a weird spot because they kind of made the playoffs out of technicality due to being in the bubble. And they didn't play very well, and they kind of got ousted. And then I forgot who their coach was. No, I think it was Kenny Atkinson, actually.
It was Kenny Atkinson, then they fired Kenny Atkinson and brought in Jacques Vaughn as your interim head coach.
So then I was like, all right, who's going to be the splash? Are they going to make a splashy hire? Are they going to make an experienced hire? Are they going to go with Jacques Vaughn because he was in the organization for quite a while? And lo and behold, I see breaking news from Adrian Wojnarowski that says Steve Nash has been hired as the Brooklyn Nets head coach. And
you know what? I feel like just if I can interject, I felt like I felt the crossed fingers and aspirations of pretty much every Net fan because they were saying Popovich.
I kind of was.
But then you heard the collective profanity shouted to the heavens as they announced Steve Nash. What the hell were they thinking? As a Net fan, can you tell me what the hell they were thinking? Because I don't know.
The only thing I can really make of this whole thing is it a splashy hire? Which I don't know if we'd call this a splashy hire because Steve Nash was one of those guys who wasn't your typical crazy man on the court that was looking to be for entertainment value purposes only.
No. But still, when I was watching, basketball highlights, and I think of back in the day, always watching ESPN, like always on my TV, I enjoyed Steve Nash. I enjoyed his work that he did on the court in Phoenix, then going on to LA for like a little short stint with Kobe before Kobe's retirement. Like you said, he was never, the top guy on the court. Well, I mean, he was the top guy in Phoenix, but he wasn't, like you said, the typical basketball player.
He wasn't Batman. He was more of a Robin type.
Right.
What do you think?
He'd get you your assists, your rebounds.
Well, he was kind of your leader. That's because your point guard is usually your leader. He was experienced point guard. Believe it or not, what most people don't realize, he actually played in the Mavericks organization with Dirk when he came up out from Germany. That was kind of the welcome to the NBA experience.
Mm-hmm.
But the weird thing that I hear about this whole situation is, as we've said, and where everyone, the big light bulb or question mark, whatever you want to say at this point, is going off in people's heads. Steve Nash doesn't have coaching experience. And
what exactly is it in his resume that makes you think he'd be a good X's and O's guy?
he's a point guard. And the reason I say that is because the point guard to the NBA is the catcher to Major League Baseball, where usually
I can play the drums, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be filling in for Dave Grohl if he breaks a leg on stage.
Well,
no, but that's not what I mean.
I think this is the thing that Nick was going to go off on. Is that, and we've said this before on our old podcast, we've said it before on here, just because you make a great player doesn't mean you're going to make a great
not
head
a good
coach.
manager make. You know that. Yeah.
Well, I could give you an example way back in the day, which was before our time. Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson was not a good head coach for the Lakers after he retired. Magic Johnson, they gave him a talk show on television because of charisma. Well, guess what? I think he only did 20 or 25 shows, and then they just gave up because he wasn't good at the job. So just because your charisma will earn you opportunities, but you have to be able to build on those opportunities and make them work. Guys like Steve Kerr, who had no coaching experience, he was just a part of the Chicago Bulls dynasty that won all the championships in the 90s. He eventually built himself up and eventually became a good head coach. And look, they won 2 championships. So it all depends on what the situation is.
Right.
It all depends on what he goes into next year, because we don't know what the Nets are going to look like next year.
Well, 2 of the guys that they're going to look like.
You'll get Durant back, but and you'll get Kyrie Irving back, hopefully. But in terms of, are you comfortable handing the keys to the keys to a Cadillac to this guy?
No, of course not. And unfortunately, our opinions don't really matter because
of course they don't.
Because the way coaches are hired today is not based on experience. They're actually hired based on who they know inside the organization. And unfortunately, Steve Nash, and we all had a good laugh about this when we looked up Steve Nash's credentials before becoming a coach. He was in the Warriors organization as a part-time consultant.
A part-time consultant, because you got to get those basketball opinions in before tea time. And look, he's the 16th. He would probably be the 16th man on the totem pole in terms of decision making. In terms of Steph Curry going to him and saying, "Should I have the chicken or should I have the sea bass?" Then he could probably answer that question. I know I'm being harsh. I am.
I mean, to be fair with Steve Nash, we were saying about his credentials, and as a player, his credentials.
Oh, as a player,
2-time MVP, 8-time All-Star, 3-time first team, 2-time second team, and assist leader in 5 seasons. He is one of the best that we have seen in the NBA.
And he's got playoff experience. He's got playoff
experience. Right. Yeah. Hall of Famer in 2018 too. But again, this is as a player.
Right. People always get this confused. No matter what the sport, there's a difference between having a Hall of Fame career as a player and a Hall of Fame career as a coach.
I mean, not even just as a coach, just a difference between, because you could stink as a player but be a good coach too. I mean, actually, if you're going to talk about great playing, playing resume and owner resume, look at Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
I got an even better example for you.
Okay.
Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah, Wayne Gretzky. It took Wayne Gretzky a while to
143, 161, and 24 in his seasons in Phoenix.
And he's just starting to come around, like in the recently, Gretzky as an owner.
See, what people need to realize, the difference between a playing career and a coach, it's like making a complete 180 when it comes to preparation.
One more, sorry, Derek Jeter.
Although I don't think he'll ever be. I don't think he wanted to ever be a manager.
But also,
I get it. Making personnel decisions are still.
Right. Well, also we should clarify: Jeter is only the face of that management. Technically, he's only a minority owner. He
doesn't even own 1% for crying out loud.
Right.
So
he's the inflatable tube man out in front of the franchise at the car dealership.
Wacky inflatable tube man. But basically, what I was going to say, the difference I'll say about that, Tom, is that Jeter was looking to get into the ownership game. He wasn't necessarily looking to be decision maker, even though the decision making kind of fell into his lap. Jeter was just looking to be in ownership, and that was the rumor for the longest time, that Jeter wanted to be in ownership. Now, excuse me, that you have you can't even say you haven't experienced Brooklyn Nets ownership at this point. I mean, look, you had Mikhail Prokhorov for many years, and he kind of dumped that organization into the ground. And now you have
things now, Joe Tsai,
who was one of the guys that spoke out during the whole NBA versus China debate. So you have a lot of moving pieces in this organization. Now, like I said, Steve Nash was hired because Steve Nash had a rapport with Kevin Durant. And that's what goes back to my point from earlier, that coaches are no longer hired due to experience. They're hired because it's their friend in the organization, and I think they get along. It's calculated risk.
And it further escalates the point that in the NBA, it's the players that drive everything. It's a player-driven league.
It's all about the players. Look at what's going on now in the NBA with the whole progressive movement when it comes to the situation. And they're controlling the narrative, not the owners, not the commissioner, the players. So everything is progressively moving. But I want to make an example because I'm looking at some of the coaches that got hired with no experience.
Yeah.
So this one's going to hurt a little bit because it's kind of in the backyard a little bit. Do you remember a certain guy that was hired to be the Knicks head coach?
I know who you're talking about. I hate that I know who you're talking about, but I know who you're talking about.
So Derek Fisher was hired.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, there it is.
And
hey, think about this. Steve Kerr could have been our head coach that season.
Well, actually, for the longest time,
no wonder.
I don't know. Did Kerr turn it down? I thought Kerr turned it down.
No, he turned it down.
So, looking back at the record, 2 seasons with the Knicks, 40 and 96, winning percentage.
I think he completed that second season. I think he was fired mid-season,
well,
wasn't he?
I think he was.
Didn't he allegedly get into like a car accident?
Yeah, because he was having an affair with somebody, or I don't friggin' know.
I think he's now the coach of the some team in the WNBA. I think if I'm not
the head coaching and organizational decisions of the New York Knicks over the past 15 years, or even 5 years. It's about as complicated as a QAnon plot.
Hey, if we're going to talk Knicks and Nets and, coaching and, a first-time head coach, a former player we brought in.
I know where you're going.
Remember Jason Kidd?
Yeah, I knew you were going to go there.
Yeah. I figured you were going to mention him.
Well, and Jason Kidd did something dirty, which people don't mention very often.
Was it the spillage?
No, I'm not even talking about that.
Okay.
And it wasn't talked about, and I know about it because I did a lot of insider reading on it. So when Jason Kidd failed miserably, I shouldn't say failed miserably, but I think I have the record. He went 44 and 38 in one season, and I think
which is not terrible.
But when the organization kind of had some BS go on between the ownership and him, and remember he went to go be the head coach of the Bucks.
Yeah.
Well, he tried to facilitate a trade as the Nets coach before leaving to send his players over to the Bucks because he knew he was going to be the coach of the Bucks.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
God.
You would think that an experience like that would put off Brooklyn from hiring any former players like that, but they must have some kind of assurance.
Just so you know,
he isn't going to end up being a scumbag.
Just so you know, he was actually in the running again to be the head coach of the Nets.
Oh my God.
Who, Jason Kidd?
Yes.
God,
those who fail to learn from
anything.
Guys, those who fail to learn from history
are destined to repeat it.
Well, my favorite saying is failing upwards. So basically the way I would put this, because I don't know, I mean, Derek Fisher was a massive fail. Steve Kerr was a massive win. So the last two you have a 50-50 shot of being a good coach. Now, Steve Nash, I think the issue he's going to have is that he's not going to scream at players. Well, we already know Kevin Durant is one of the most sensitive players in the NBA. So if you yell at him, he's going to cry and look for his mother. But basically, I just don't know what's going to happen in this. Kyrie Irving, forget it. Kyrie Irving thinks that the world is flat. So we don't know what his whole situation is. So basically what I would say is Steve Nash could probably be a good head coach, but he has two of the most sensitive players in all of the NBA. So I know that's harsh, but unfortunately, like I said, Kevin Durant's going to go need a rattle in a bottle because he's such a baby. So
we said when Durant and Irving first went to the Nets, and like before this pandemic situation happened, and before Durant suffered his injury. Well, not before, but you get what I mean. Like we said, we need to see them together on the court to judge, how this signing was going to pay off.
Right, and unfortunately, he hasn't been healthy. And
Kyrie, we don't know what's going on with him with the pandemic and everything. He may not want to play next season if next season's all on a bubble.
Ugh. I mean, like I said, Kyrie Irving has flat Earth syndrome. So basically, we don't know what to expect from Kyrie Irving at this point. But anyway, my whole assessment on this whole situation is right now it's a question mark. I don't know if it's good or it's bad. I have to see how it plays out.
Okay.
Emoji?
Exactly. Speaking of bad situations, let's talk a little bit about this minor league baseball conundrum going on. So, per sources from ESPN, and there was a whole bunch of names who collaborated on this article here.
TJ Quinn being the big one.
TJ Quinn was a big one. And let's see here. It was TJ Quinn,
Pedro Gomez,
Artie Burko, Tisha Thompson, and Paula Levine.
It was their whole investigative team at ESPN.
There you go. So apparently these 40-plus team cut, I think it's 42 to 43 to be exact, that we have talked about previously on the show. Well, apparently it is going to happen according to ESPN in their investigation of Major League Baseball. So I'm going to read a little bit of their article here. So Dave Heller, who owns 4 minor league teams, said, "We were told very clearly if we didn't get that thing passed," because remember, part of this started even before the pandemic, when we were talking about minor league baseball players and wages. I remember when I had a couple of different part-time gigs, we took my salary. I mean, we took the money that I made in a year, compared it with a minor league baseball player. It's kind of the same. That's
kind of scary. No offense to you. I'm just saying that's kind of scary.
Right. They were trying to get an act passed, Save America's Pastime Act, which has failed. So now what's going to happen is...
Can I make one point, though, before you finish that, which is... Yeah. Unfortunately, I wouldn't. Sports and getting acts passed don't seem to be a good situation right now, considering what. And unfortunately, I'm not bringing politics into it, but just to make the point that Trump kind of crapped on the NBA and its ratings, so I don't think he's helping any sports right now.
Let's to be really fair here. I mean. No, because I agree with you, because over in my expertise, so boxing has the Muhammad Ali Act, and they have been for years trying to push that into mixed martial arts, and that's just never been a thing. They've been trying to push for unions, for fighters with the UFC and just all of mixed martial arts in general. It hasn't happened, and if it didn't happen during a pandemic, I don't think it's ever going to happen. But anyways, going back to this, so here are some of the details that TJ, Pedro, and the rest of them have figured out. So the minor league system, as it has existed for decades, will effectively end when the current agreement between MLB and MILB expires on September 30th. The MILB office in St. Petersburg, none, no more. Everything will be run directly out of MLB headquarters in New York City.
That sounds more like a cost-cutting move, more than just we're done with minor league baseball. It's just a cost-cutting move.
Right. Well, I think it's a combination of both. I think it's a combination of they're trying to work out some financial stuff during the pandemic, which we know, even just from the major league level, stretching with the long negotiations between MLB and the Players Association. Plus now, like we were mentioning the wages for minor leaguers before, they want to get that up, but that's going to come at the cost of jobs. So MLB executives, owners have tried for 11 months to find some sort of leverage with MLB. But, it's like we were talking about when we interviewed a couple of the minor league experts, when we talked to the Buffalo Bison's general manager, Anthony, that basically the small business kind of structure with MILB and the parent-child structure between MLB and MILB. The two crossed, and it seems to have, even at least recently, started to not get along.
Like fizzle out almost.
Yeah. So here are some of the details. So there will be only 120 affiliated teams. It'll be a limit of 4 minor league teams per MLB franchise. This means at least 42 teams will lose their affiliations. Some will become independent teams. Some independent teams could become affiliates. Minor league owners don't know which teams are on the cut list, and that cut list is private, but pretty much there will no longer be rookie and short season Class A levels. So your rookie clubs, for those of you wondering, are your Gulf Coast teams. So the Gulf Coast League in Florida.
Before single A.
Yeah, the Arizona teams. Yeah, everybody before the short A level. Short A, single A is some prominent teams you may know: the Brooklyn Cyclones, the Staten Island Yankees, the Hudson Valley Renegades, Connecticut Tigers, the Ohio Valley. I think they're the Scrappers.
Well, I just want to add one more business thing to this situation because MLB and TuneIn, their deal just expired to have all games be streaming, and now, like, I saw someone ask on social media, like, since we're in the New York area, why does WFAN have the rights to now stream the games online? Because they technically weren't allowed to.
Yeah, if you ever listen to radio.com, when a Yankee game was playing, they would broadcast some other show. I don't even know what it was.
Right. So now, because they don't have a deal, now you're going to see stations streaming the games until they find out what their whole situation is going to be. Major League Baseball's business is in the toilet, and that's me putting it nicely at this point.
All right, so so I'm just to continue on with these points. So lower level players will train in their major leagues clubs in the spring training facilities in Arizona and Florida, but scores of paying jobs in the game, as we just mentioned, will be lost. And one point, by the way, so I mentioned the short season single A teams like Staten Island, Brooklyn, Connecticut, Ohio Valley. So now this does not exactly mean that those clubs are going to be the ones cut. They could decide, the Yankees could decide, hey, you know what? We'd like Staten Island to remain in our thing so we can be more local, like Nick Fodera, you had said in a pre-show meeting. So Charleston, Charleston River Dogs, goodbye. Like, they could do that. So we won't know for sure about everything, though, until that team list comes out. MLB will take over all merchandising, broadcast, and sponsorship rights, splitting net revenues 50-50 with the minor league clubs.
Because they're taking on more of the work.
Correct. Yeah. So now what happens to those teams that are pretty much going to be gone? Actually, let me read that, not from the article. Let me read it from the thread that TJ Quinn posted on Twitter. So first, what happens to the 42 or 43 teams that are going to lose their affiliation? The MLB will present a plan in the next week or so to convert these clubs, most of them short season A and rookie clubs. So most of them are going to be gone, but not all of them. They will either become independent leagues, independent teams in baseball leagues that are not affiliated with MLB, or they will become wood bat leagues with college players. Like, the prominent one I can think of is the Cape Cod League up in New England. Which is filled
at all.
What happened?
Boy, that's not confusing at all.
And TJ has said that some non-affiliated teams, independent clubs right now, could become minor league franchises, like the St. Paul Saints in Minnesota and the Sugarland Skeeters, who compete in one of the Texas leagues right now.
That's an independent league where Roger Clemens and Tracy McGrady tried to become pitchers.
Right, and actually, we're talking about the Yankees, and to stay on the local thing, there's a rumor that the Yankees are considering the Somerset Patriots down in New Jersey to join their minor league system.
Because it's more local to the area, I guess.
Yeah, and Staten Island Yankees, I know from experience, in the past few years have just not been making a lot of money. They can't get fans in.
It doesn't help that the pandemic, people are not going to games at all.
But the pandemic, there is no minor league baseball, period.
Well, there's really nothing at this point. I don't know how these teams are still making money. I guess they're making money off of TV rights and sponsors.
Right.
But
I feel bad for the players who are going to lose their careers before they even start. I feel bad for these, local cities, where they don't get a lot of baseball because the minor league baseball is the closest thing to them, and now
it's
that's
not
up
only
in the air.
you're leaving out one more thing as well, because take the college football where there's very limited college football. Some towns are college football towns. That's where they make the business when the college football games are on the weekend. So you don't have college baseball. You don't have college football.
Well, if you're going to talk about the pandemic in college, remember how all the players who were affected, like with their senior season and everything, because of the canceled season with the pandemic, they're going to get an extra year. So now, what's the situation with walk-ons and scholarships giving out? Those kids coming out of high school are going to lose opportunities as well.
You also have a risk for guys who are in their last year of college, and they're like, "Do I come back for another season?
Do I go pro now?"
Yeah. So you have that whole issue, but I know we're running a little bit over, so I just want to make sure we get to everything. But long story short, I'll say that we have an issue with minor league sports because that's going to trickle up into the major league level.
In terms of depleting the talent pool that the teams will have access to.
Right. So it's a problem. We're going to try and get somebody on it because we've covered it.
And like you said, after this whole pandemic and this whole situation with NIL, the MLB's business structure is just completely in question right now.
I wouldn't trust Rob Manfred with a 6-foot pole at this point.
One thing here
I wouldn't trust him not to shove it anywhere important. That's the thing.
like that Christmas song, "You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch" said. I wouldn't even come close to Rob Manfred with a 39.5-foot pole.
Jesus. But unfortunately, from the jokes to
before we go, we do need to pay some tribute here. Terrific talent, Tom Seaver, one of the best pitchers that New York baseball has ever seen, if not the entire Major League Baseball has ever seen, has passed away from complications of dementia and COVID-19, if I remember correctly.
And Lyme disease. I heard that.
Well, there's nothing else that we can add to it but to say that he was the greatest Met of all time. I mean, in terms of the impact that he had on that franchise, if they don't win in '69, if the Miracle Mets don't happen, there are no Mets today. There's no way that franchise would have been able.
That was the beginning of the organization.
Basically, yeah. He was with the Mets for initially 10 seasons, 67 to 77, then came back for 83. In between that time, he played with the Reds. After the 83 season, played a few seasons with the White Sox, played one with the Red Sox. 12-time All-Star, World Series champion, a 3-time Cy Young Award winner. He was the 1967 NL Rookie of the Year, actually.
He was one of the best pitchers of his generation.
Right, strikeouts leader, wins leader in the National League. He pitched a no-hitter on June 16th, 1978. So
won 300 games.
300. Yeah, he's a part of the 300 club. 2.86 career ERA, 3,640 strikeouts. And he was, inducted into the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I would hope so. Yeah.
98.84%. Like you said, that's one of the greatest pitchers to have ever played this game.
And he is, again, like I said, the greatest Met to ever put the uniform on. Because as much as you can argue about the legacy of people like Doc and Darryl and Keith Hernandez and everybody else on the 86 team, I mean, Tom Seaver made the Miracle Mets happen.
Mm-hmm.
And again, he built this franchise. As much as any one player can be credited for the success of one franchise or the ascendancy of a Major League franchise, he's it.
Absolutely. All right. So that is going to be it for this edition of Enter the Bench. Make sure to give us a like and a follow here on Facebook. Please make sure to hit that follow button so that way you can be the first to know when we're going live with things. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at ETB Sports to make sure you stay up to date with some of the news items that we're going to be talking about on episodes. And go to enterthebenchsportspod.weebly.com. All our past episodes, interviews, all our podcast stuff, old podcast stuff is up there and more. So, Nick Morgasen, Nick Fodera, I'm Tom Albano, and we'll see you next week. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody!
Good night and have a good Labor Day.